really functional. So there was very little that they made that was beautiful, and they really never had the training for it. They were kind of just trained by the Hudson's Bay Company. So they could make axes and traps and all sorts of bits and pieces like that, but they never did well with really fine like basket twists or ornate things. They just didn't have the time or the knowledge. They were spending so much time making all of the trade goods.
And that you're saying at the trading post. Who?
The blacksmiths making here for trade goods here. Yeah. So
the fellow over there was saying that barrel making was so lucrative in itself. There's just no need to make decorative items, right?
Yeah, and
they were like really high-paid tradespersons.
They were incredibly wealthy, and that's the thing, because here there was no other access to metal goods, right? And if you shipped them in, if you shipped them out of England, you had to pay a tax on any goods that was shipped out. So this way, instead of paying tax, you just shipped out the material and hired the blacksmith, right, to make the goods. It was cheaper that way. Now it's going to be a bit of a giant coat, but still. And everything was done by eye, right? There were very few patterns, so it just reflected what the blacksmith thought of it. So there's lots of little bits, pieces, and adjustments, and for me, that's always a bit.
It's a bit like sketching in metal.
It is. It's very much like that. And so each piece, I've seen lots of the archaeological record of the pieces that are around, and because it was wrought iron, there is some shift of it over time, but there's very little. Again, just like that. Because it was made of iron, it didn't have to be pretty. It was the nature of just being iron that was made it so valuable. So there just wasn't a beautiful shape or eye or line. Very, very few things carried much.
That is one nice bellows.
Well, it's in the process. It's hung with was hung with pulleys, and I'm just finishing off making a new pole for it. So that's been the last thing. So it was carving the pole out of a piece of birch and then forging all of the collars and making all of the bolts yesterday. And I just have to make the nuts now, and that's my last piece, and then a piece to hang it on there, which is really overkill for what they would have had, because probably what they had as the pole would just be a stick. Almost all of the bellows just had like a branch that they'd find and they'd tie it on with whatever there was, but
just whatever worked.
I just couldn't.
Again, they're so busy making money that they just don't have time to.
That is it. I really think that's it. It's
that is.
Why use a big valuable spar or something like that for that when you can just use a
It works and it's quick, and then if it breaks, you just put another one in there. I know that for me with art, it's the same thing. When I'm making money, I don't have time for art.
Oddly enough, this stock of this size could probably be shaped by hand cold. It would have a little bit of stress on it, and certainly the kind of wrought iron that they were dealing with at the time could have handled an enormous amount of movement cold without having to heat it up. But you run the risk of possibly a little bit of cracking if you do that, but really not much with that kind of iron. And hooks were tremendously useful, because all cooking, all heating was done by the fire. So you had to have things that survived above the fire. So you had your pots above the fire. You had, your cooking tools were above the fire.
Right,
Everything
right.
was just there.
Right. So you might hang a pot over the fire using a hook like this
Using
kind of
hook,
thing.
Just everything kind of being hung. It ended up being a longer piece of metal than I'm usually using, so I'm not too satisfied with it, but I'm going to be banging it all day if I don't just stop. So I'm just putting beeswax on. So they probably didn't use a lot of beeswax. It probably would have been animal fat. So
Okay.
it probably wouldn't have been quite as nice a smell as the beeswax.
Oh yeah, it smells nice. I like
So
that.
they didn't raise bees here, so anything that they would find would have been wild bees, but there was a lot. So and honey was available, but just not extensively.
And what is it for?
So being a blacksmith, they left all of the coating on all of it, all of the scale, all of this forged scale. So if I filed it, it would be shiny. But by leaving it on, it acts as a rust inhibitor, and then putting the wax over top of it doubles that. So it just keeps it from rusting. And
Oh,
which is
okay.
useful if you're, cooking or working around.
Right, like this axe here, you see it has rust on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see this trap here has rust. If it had the wax on it, then it doesn't rust.
And the nice thing is because modern things we coat with paint and it keeps them from rusting, but as soon as the paint breaks, the water gets in and the paint keeps the water on the metal, and so it rusts, where this doesn't. So if it ever rusted, people would just brush the rust off, add more wax or lard or whatever, and it would be back. You wouldn't have to strip the paint, sand it all down, you just give it a brush and let it go. I'm just cooling this down a little bit. Wow. In the wintertime, I like to test whether things are warmed with my hands. Because in here, although it seems like, ooh, it's a nice warm place to be, it's just
It's
as cold
cold.
here.
Huh?
Because it's so efficient in taking the heat away. I really can't feel much of the heat until I get my hand right over the forge.
It stays very local. Okay.
Now, I do notice it when it's not going. When it's not going, I can feel that the whole place is warm. Whereas you move closer to this and it just kind of, I warm up a little bit. But it's not the... Now, I'm fine with that and I love it. I don't know if your hands are cold. That should be warm enough. You can hold your hands on it and warm them up. Yeah.
Wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Are you giving that to her?
Of course.
Really?
Yeah.
It's for you? Yeah.
Oh, by all means, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mira qué lindo, ¿no?
Wow.
Toma un foto con tu amigo.